Antiques Roadshow expert is shocked after seeing this woman's family jewel. For more than 40 years, Antiques Roadshow has made us dream of discovering treasures in our own attics. The best episodes are the ones featuring people discovering something truly unique and making them big. But one episode went outside the box when the show's longest-serving reviewer was literally moved to tears by an object. Lark Mason has come to film a new episode of PBS's famous Antiques Roadshow in order to meet the locals and honestly assess their items. But he was far from expecting the whirlwind of emotions that this day had in store for him. When it comes to Chinese antiques, Mason is one of the best. He spent 24 years at the prestigious Sotheby's auction house in New York, where he rose to the title of Senior Vice President in Chinese art. Not to mention that Mason is a renowned expert, teacher, and speaker. He even ended up starting his own auction company. Yet he still spent 22 years wowing trinket lovers at Antiques Roadshow. What you might not know is that not all of those reviewers get paid. They volunteer for this work and cover their own travel expenses, a testament to their passion for priceless antiques. On the other hand, it takes a lot of luck to get an interview with an assessor, let alone the final on-air selection. The show only takes place in 6 cities each year, which means thousands of people line up for their chance. Honestly, for an expert, it's not that big of a deal when a person arrives with something of value without realizing it. However, there was something different about the object Mason examined that day. You see, each episode follows a familiar rhythm. First, the person enthusiastically explains how the item they brought to be evaluated came into their possession. Then an expert tells the story of the object, before giving the juicy information, its real value. By that day in 2002, it was obvious from the outset that Lark Mason was eager to begin the expertise. The suspense sets in. The woman explains how she came into possession of the marble lion statue on the table. It was a family heirloom, bequeathed by his mother. They had first noticed this work of art during a trip to China decades ago, but she was unsure of exactly when. However, she had her own idea about the history of the object. A friend who was more familiar with Chinese art had examined the statue and believed it dated back to the Ming Dynasty, which means that the lion would date from a time between the 14th and the 17th century. When Mason began his usual presentation, he was overcome with emotion. Her voice broke and it took a moment for her to pull herself together and find the right words. Okay, well, I'm going to start off by saying that when I saw this object I could barely. He choked. Obviously, the object on the table was the cause of this unusual loss of composure. Mason explained that the lion did not belong to the Ming Dynasty, but what was in front of them was something truly exceptional. It's fantastic. It's really... Sorry, I'm a little nervous. This is one of the finest examples of Chinese art we saw in the roadshow. This sculpture is stunning. The performance is mind-blowing, Mason said, adding to the excitement surrounding him. Mason pointed out the incredible detail, especially the sculpted muscles rippling across the lion's back. The marble itself was of a high quality, the best you can find. But he had to rectify part of the history of the owner of the statue. Getting corrected isn't so painful when the truth increases the stakes. He taught her that the statue was older than she thought. It dates from the golden age of Chinese art, called the Tang Dynasty, between the 6th century and the 9th century, said the expert. Mason said he had seen other similar statues auctioned off, but they were generally much smaller and less grandiose than this one. In fact, he clarified that it was an object that should be in a museum. Several clues allowed Mason to deduce the great age of the statue, in particular the coarse chisel marks on the plinth and the absence of a signature. The texture and color of this high-quality marble confirmed his suspicions. Finally, Mason revealed the detail that everyone was waiting for. What was the value of this object? Well, he conservatively estimated that the statue could easily sell for between $120,000 and $180,000. And the good news doesn't end there. Mason added that the insurance estimate for this scary lion was even higher, between $150,000 and $250,000. For years she had unknowingly had a small fortune gathering dust. The owner of the statue thanked Mason for this information, which would undoubtedly change his life forever. But she decided to keep the statue in the family, and her loyalty to her family heritage actually inspired another family to take a new approach to finding treasures. In 2007, during a neighborhood garage sale, This family, who wishes to remain anonymous, bought several porcelain and ceramic objects for their kitchen. Most of them were just basic white dishes, but one stood out. One of the small dishes had unique floral designs inside and out, unlike the others. This particular object would fit perfectly into their kitchen decor. The family put the bowl away on a kitchen shelf without thinking about it. It was just a bowl after all. For 6 years, this bowl remained a decorative element in the kitchen and sometimes used for spaghetti, until a small detail aroused their curiosity. They couldn't help but think that the engraved floral designs indicated that the bowl was worth more than the miserable $3 they had paid. After speaking with experts, they were advised to submit the bowl to Sotheby's. Sotheby's is one of the most prestigious auction houses in the world, and its experts are true specialists in their field. And this bowl immediately attracted considerable attention upon its arrival. Not only did the experts at Sotheby's say that the bowl would likely sell for a very high price, but the porcelain was nearly 1,000 years old too. The family was utterly stunned by this information. This bowl would have been made around the 10th or 11th century during the reign of the Northern Song dynasty. Its official denomination was that of a ding bowl, an extremely rare piece. The name Ding refers to Ding County, Hebei province of China, where all the ovens used to make them were located. As the family learned more, they began to realize that they had in their possession one of the only 2 such bowls left on the planet. The only other known to experts was on display in the British Museum. Can you imagine the second one was one day sitting on a table next to someone else's junk? The British Museum's Ding Bowl has been on display there for over 60 years. It was bequeathed to the museum by Henry J. Oppenheim, a famous collector. An author named Rose Kerr formulated an interesting theory about these coins which only increased the value. Since only a handful of Song dynasty Chinese could live inside palaces, these bowls were made to mimic the ornate gold objects used by royalty. Some curious buyers took this into account when raising the stakes. During the early auction, the family were in an unreal state of shock at everything that was going on. Would they really come away with several $100,000? They held their breath, and then the bidding ran out of control. London art dealer Giuseppe Eskenazi stepped up to the plate and blew up the auction by offering $2.2 million for the bowl. A silence settled in the auction room. Was anyone going to outbid? After all, Eskenazi was used to spending considerable sums of money for ancient objects. Indeed, 8 years before bidding on the Song Dynasty bowl, he had spent just over $23 million on an extremely rare 14th century glass jar. If he wanted something, he was able to buy it. With his bid of $2.3 million, Eskenazi won the bowl. The lucky new owner told CNN reporter Richard Roth, "There's only one other. Plus it's in perfect condition. Given its history, it's a miracle." Others share his enthusiasm. The auctioneer in charge of the sale, Henry Howard Sneed, spoke about this historic event. "As soon as the lid of the box was opened, I knew I was looking at something very special. Still, the buyer had a few questions. That only 2 copies survived a millennium in perfect condition was almost inconceivable. So how did this particular bowl end up in an American flea market? The answers were not clear. The New York family only knew that the bowl came from a garage sale and that its former owners surely had reason to blame themselves, but they knew there were ways to trace the history of an object.